Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me, as always, we got Jameson Maxwell, Ty Lee, and it's TCU week, and I know for a lot of y'all, like it's not really a big deal. OU TCU is not a big rivalry, but I will say for our friend group, it kind of is, mainly because our pal Boatin Blake is an alumni there. And every year, annual tradition, we have to bring him on the pod, talk about OUTCU. So, the captain, Boatin Blake, how are you doing? And welcome onto the pod.
Thank you so much. For the longtime listeners out there, last year when we did this fun little special, it was very depressing for me at that time. Gary Patterson was basically a lame duck. The TCU defense was allowing everything and everyone to pass through them, and it was sad times in Fort Worth. But now this year, there's a little bit more excitement. We haven't really played anybody, but, you can convince yourself that we're actually good. So I'm really excited to talk some TCU OU this year. I think this is actually going to be a competitive game, and I'm so excited to talk some. I just want one more. I want one more. I want to replicate 2014. I just want one more win versus OU and make my life.
Blake, I was this close to downloading the video of you rushing the field, but I decided not to do it. Didn't want to accidentally show you trespassing onto a space on the internet, but yeah, that's how it goes. Jameson, how's it going?
As an OU fan right now, after losing David Hicks, we're farther in the dumps. We're not going to talk about that this pod. This is Boatin Blake's time to shine. He's feeling better than ever, obviously, with the Frogs being undefeated and the Sooners being down in the dumps. So this is going to be a really interesting podcast.
Ty, early thoughts on OU-TCU?
Yeah, I'd say Blake said something really just now that stood out to me. It's that TCU hasn't played anyone yet. So I guess OU and TCU have that in common.
Well, okay. I actually think Kansas State obviously will be a little bit. I think they'll be good. I think they'll be better than people think. And obviously they were.
He's going to work this into a Chris Kleiman as the best coach in the Big 12.
I'm just saying. Well, at least he's best coach in the Big 12 against OU by far. By far. I think.
If anything, Bobby, they're not better than we thought. You and the national media rank them so high that they're just kind of meeting expectations. Like that loss to Tulane kind of bumps them down, but maybe now they can actually reach your expectations that you thought they were going to.
I think my peanut brain just completely forgets that Kansas State exists outside of their game against OU. So every time they come back, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys always look good against OU, because they do, and then they're gonna turn around and lose to Texas Tech. But that's not the weekend spread yet. We'll get to that later. So we're going to kind of just go around the horn, ask three main questions we have about this game to Blake to kind of give us the TCU side of this. And Ty, we'll let you kick this one off. What do you got for what do you got for the captain?
Okay. Yeah. So to start us off, I guess I've been told something a little bit more specific than everyone else, so that's why I'm starting. But I'm going to go with...
Jameson just forgot to text me.
Brother, I sent the text right after we decided to in our big group. So
yeah, but Jameson was the first one on it. Jameson
Okay, I was looking for the individual. I was sorry. I'm sorry.
Man.
I'm sorry.
Get out of here. Ty just asked the question. We're going to do the structured podcast.
So
no, you totally did. Whoops. Sorry. Anyways.
The structured becomes unstructured.
Blake, in your opinion, if you are TCU and you're looking at this OU, you are Gary Patterson, TCU's head coach, and you're looking at this OU team, and I guess he's not. He's about to be Texas's head coach here in a bit, I guess. But what is OU's critical vulnerability that TCU is going to game plan and really try to exploit? If you had to pick one thing, one thing to put pressure on, one thing to really game plan against, or try to run towards, throw towards, or whatever. What is our one really, I guess, Achilles heel?
Yeah, we kind of saw it last week with K-State, and it's just to run the ball down OU's throat. And K-State, not only they have Deuce Vaughn, a really good running back, but Taylor Martinez, he's not the best passer in the world, but like, my God, can that man run? And so we kind of need to do a version of that game plan. Like, I don't think Max Duggan is not an elite, like, he's a really good runner, but he's not an elite mobile quarterback like Adrian Martinez when it comes to the run game. And we don't have like as good of running backs as Deuce Vaughn. But Keontae Miller and DeMarcado, our two running backs, have kind of been like a nice lightning and thunder combination this year. Miller being kind of the more pound it. He's been getting about 5, 6, 7 yards a carry with like the line actually getting a good push there. And then they throw in DeMarcado on the back end. He's the one that kind of can still gut you up the middle, but he's taking it for 15, 20 yards. But we're not going to see probably him take as much carries as Miller. But if I'm TCU this week, I look at that K-State game and it's just like, look, K-State had 45 runs on OU. Kind of replicate that. We're going to be better at passing it, but really establish the run out of the gate, because one, it slows the game down, gets the ball out of Dylan Gabriel's hands and OU's offense, which I still think not as potent as years past, but still pretty deadly. Keep them off the field, keep our defense rested, and then just hope our defense doesn't break. So I'm just gonna.
This isn't my question, Blake, but you made me think of this. Last time we were in Fort Worth, the offensive line got absolutely demolished for TCU, and I feel like this game plan that you're talking about doesn't really require that good of a running back, but more so the big guys up front. With like losing Easy and everything, do y'all have a decent offensive line this year?
I would say not really. Like, it's a little bit more improved than last year, but that doesn't mean much because last year was pretty horrible as well. But we have gotten good push with running. I will say that they've been really bad in the pass block, and we've seen, like, even last week, SMU being like, they're kind of similar to TCU, just like a very meh defense, but they were getting to Max Duggan all day long. He took like 5 or 6 sacks, really didn't have as much time in the pocket as you would like. So I am a little bit worried about that, just because anytime we drop out to pass, it has to be something short or intermediate, just because we have no pass block right now.
So I'll also say this, are there any weaknesses that you think TCU has that you're looking at OU and what they've been able to do and do well that you're like, well, this is an area we could certainly struggle. Granted, you've only played Colorado, Tarleton State, and SMU, so not exactly great competition, but in the earlier games, have you seen any weaknesses for the Frogs?
Yeah, SMU in the second half kind of figured it out that our defense is basically playing, we don't have elite talent on that side this year, so we're basically playing bend, don't break. We're going to not be hyper aggressive. We're not going to be blitzing a lot of guys. We're going to keep our corners and safeties off receivers and just make quarterbacks beat you. And last week, SMU, that kind of startled them at first. Like, we would get good, they would try to run it first, second down, get nowhere, and then we'd put them in third and long situations, and they were converting a lot of those the second half. But I think OU, if they're smart, we're not going to let you throw it over the top against us. Like, last year was abysmal with that, was just like we were being hyper aggressive with no talent. So we're just getting beat by the explosive plays. That's not how Joe Gillespie is going to play this game. He's going to try to keep OU just very much in front of him and make Dylan Gabriel make 10, 15-yard passes, which SMU almost came back in the game just doing that. They figured out, like, Rashee Rice is going to get like 3, 4, 5 yards of room. He can get a first down every single time if we just target him. So that's when looking at our defense, I'm just a little bit worried about that, because OU's offense is going to have to be patient, but if they are, like, it basically just turns into a shootout, and I think OU probably has the better offensive talent.
So essentially just eliminate the big play.
Yeah, and honestly, it's really smart for us, just because the big play has killed us against OU in the past, and so, and especially since y'all have like significantly more elite talent, I would say, than most of the Big 12 schools. I know the receiver room isn't as good as years past, but I saw like last week during versus K-State, like the big plays were keeping y'all in that game, and even though K-State kind of like came out, punched y'all in the mouth, like that big play still kept y'all lingering there, and we have to eliminate that in order to win the game.
Jameson?
Yeah, I'm thinking with this. I felt like another TCU past question here. Y'all's secondary has been really good. Obviously, you have a pretty good alumni in the past couple of years. And I feel like Tomlinson might be your biggest name that most people will know on the defensive backs, but I thought he struggled a lot in that SMU game. Do you think your secondary is your weakest point or of your defense in terms of linebackers and defensive line, or what's your kind of opinion on the secondary?
I would say so. Probably it's that and pass rush. I feel like we haven't gotten good pressure on the quarterback really at all this year, but it probably does come down to our secondary just because if you spread it out 5 wide against us, we don't have the talent to cover most receivers. And Thomason looked really bad versus SMU just because they're basically putting on an island versus Rashee Rice, who's a really good receiver, big, physical, and he was making dumb fouls in the sense he was allowing a lot of holding, pass interference and stuff. But kind of what I said, he was saving the big play that if it Rashee Rice was trying to get on the outside, could easily break one. He's gonna commit that penalty just to give us another chance at life. And so he's very smart in that sense. Y'all's number 1 receiver this year, is it
It's probably Mims.
It's absolutely Marvin Mims. There's no probably with it.
It's Mims.
And so
he almost said probably again.
The good thing about Mims is it's going to be more speedy, which I think goes more into Tomlinson's game. He's not a physically imposing guy at receiver that we see with a Rashee Rice or some of those Iowa State receivers in the past and stuff like that. So I think he's going to have a better game, but even if you have that, I think the rest of our corners are really not that good. Safeties are fine, but the corners, not that good.
Okay.
Yeah, so important to note, TCU will be bringing out the best OU quarterback that we will see playing if he plays in Chandler Morris. With that being said, just to dive a little bit deeper into it, how concerned are you guys, or I guess you specifically, with Dillon Gabriel? I know in the past you've been sort of critical of him, and inexplicably you've held on to the take that quarterbacks who don't throw interceptions are bad. Is the fact that Dillon Gabriel does not throw interceptions, is that going to hurt OU in this matchup against TCU?
Honestly, I think maybe if he threw an interception in that K-State game, I think OU wins. Those big plays would have been there. He wasn't taking the haymakers, but in all seriousness, Dillon Gabriel, it does kind of worry me just because I think back, I think he's a very poor man's Baker Mayfield, but Baker Mayfield alone just against TCU is just a scary thing that anytime I felt like we got pressure against Baker Mayfield in any of our matchups against him, he would just scramble out and go for 10, 15 yards. And it's just it's the most demoralizing thing when the quarterback's just kind of running all over you all game long and you can't stop him. So I'm a little bit more worried about Dillon Gabriel, his legs. His throwing, it looked good. I will say it looks good. But he is very similar, I would say, Max Duggan, where he'll have one of those runs during the game and you're just God, he'll just break it for 40 or 50 yards, and it's just super demoralizing. It's just I wouldn't say he's an elite running quarterback, but they'll just have those big gains that just takes the breath, takes the wind out of your sails. So
I don't think he's that big of a running quarterback. Do y'all think so? I think he had that one big QB draw, but he's not been doing that well, Blake. If that's what you're worried about scrambling out of the pocket with pressure, he's been horrible at that this season. That has been as far as biggest weakness. Yeah, he holds onto the ball into the pocket too long, and just 1 second too long where he can't escape the pocket and can't throw the ball away, taking too many sacks. So with that being a concern for you, that makes me feel a little bit nervous.
Yeah, because he's been kind of fluky, I would say.
No, I think it's the level of opponents that we've been facing. If you go and look at his stats, he's not. If you look at the stats alone, it's very misleading because last game, I think he had 50 yards or something, but he had one 60-yarder and then the rest were negative. It's kind of like if you were to take whatever year Tom Brady had his highest rushing yards as a quarterback and then just look at the stat line and go oh, this guy can kind of run sometimes. Dillon Gabriel's run threat is pretty similar to to Tom Brady's, I would say. And I'm not even trying to do a bit
but
there.
he's
like
maybe not.
He's not
fast
good.
and he's much faster than Brady, but I just don't think like he has
Tom
that
Brady's
kind
like
of
47
knack to
years
get out of
old.
the pocket. When was a time this season with Dylan Gabriel where he evaded the pass rush, got out of the pocket, and made a good play on the run, passing the ball? I can't even think of one off the top of my head. I'm sure there's a couple, but it's just not the strongest part of his game. Kind of transitioning this away from, talking about Oklahoma all the time, because we want to learn a little bit more about TCU. A quarterback that can do that really well, and that kind of play style in a quarterback has really hurt OU a lot in the past and hurt us last week, is a guy like Max Duggan. Are you believing in the Max Duggan hype this year and his efficiency numbers? And also, is Quentin Johnston, his receiver, is this like a legitimate first-round draft pick kind of guy like some draft guys are saying?
Yeah, so I'll first go into Max Duggan. Going into the season, I was not a Max Duggan guy. I've seen kind of 3 years now of Max Duggan at least having a start, and although he can make some of those game-breaking plays, he doesn't have like a consistent enough deep ball. He's accurate enough, but it just felt like something was lacking. It's like kind of like when you're making a creative player in a sports video game and you get the initial allotment of points, it was like they gave him a good run, but I just felt like his accuracy, his arm, everything else was just like a little bit too less. It's like not less enough that you're going to bench him because he's still a good college quarterback, but just didn't really wow you with like a single one of his features. And so I saw Chandler Morris play at versus Baylor last year, and I like fell in love with this guy. I'm like, holy crap, Chandler Morris, like he's kind of just like, he's not going to be a pro style quarterback, but he's like one of those fun college quarterbacks. He's really mobile, he's throwing on the run, he's just kind of a gamer. And I'm like, oh my god, like this is the guy we need. Like a Sonny Dykes offense is going to get more of a guy like a Shane Buechele, a Tanner Mordecai, maybe not as much Tanner Mordecai, but he wants a bigger arm. Like he wants a pocket passer, bigger arm, spreading out 5, and just like getting receivers just good routes, get them open. And so we didn't really have like a big arm pocket passer type like that. So I'm like, if we're not going to have that, gonna go Chandler Morris. Chandler Morris looked awful versus Colorado. And they were eventually able to kind of separate, but then they put in Max Duggan, and Max Duggan just had a spark to him. He didn't really throw that much that game, but he just like would tuck it and run 20, 30 yards. Like he just looked electric. And then we played Tarleton, and then we played last week versus SMU, and his passing just looks so much more improved that it's like, oh my gosh, like there's some accuracy here. Like his deep ball is getting a lot better. Like he's kind of putting it in the breadbasket for Quentin Johnson. We'll get to him in a second, but he's starting to look better. And so that's what gives me kind of hope in this, is like, instead of having 2 cooks in the kitchen and not knowing a quarterback around this time of year, I feel like Max Duggan's the guy this year. And I feel like he's won it and earned it just because of how efficient he's been. I don't think those numbers, like the advanced analytics on him right now, are insane. Like they're not going to stand up just because of the defenses that we played. But I think he is our starting quarterback, and I think he's earned that spot. And I want to see him succeed just because he has been a lifelong frog. He hasn't hit the transfer portal, and that would be an awesome story. But to your other point, Quentin Johnston, he's been my most disappointing and most frustrating part about TCU, about our TCU offense this year. Like, I think Sonny Dykes has done a really great job we used to run so many, I felt like it was just like screen passes, short dump off underneath. I hated that. I hate having to rely on yards after the catch in order to get big plays and big gains. Like, I like those intermediate routes, 10, 15 yards across the field. Like, get some chunks that way. And Meacham and Cumbie just weren't ever doing that. So, coming to Quentin Johnston, he's only been playing, he's been playing on the outside like we think. He does nothing across the middle, which is really frustrating, that has such a unique combination of size and height and strength and just pure athletic ability that the only time we see him really featured in the offense is 30, 40-yard fades down the field, and he's been so bad about staying in bounds. He'll make these miraculous catches, but he's 2 feet out of bounds. He doesn't know where the sideline is. So it's really frustrating that it feels like the best piece and probably the best athletic player on our roster has not been involved this year. And I'm worried about that. In a game like OU, when you're a 7-point dog in your own house, you need him to be involved. And so I want to see a little bit more just like across the middle. I guess you could continue the fade route because honestly, Max Duggan's been throwing a great ball to him, but first round, no. Like I see why people like him. I like the physical gifts, but it's just like when you think of those first round receivers, like even like a guy who gets made fun of all the time, like Jalen Rager. Like Jalen Rager at TCU just dominated. Like he took over games and made sure that like each game he put a stamp on it. I don't get that with Quentin Johnson, and I think he's a really great athlete, but he just doesn't have that like I'm performing so well, feed me at least like 10 to 12, 15 times a game.
Yeah, I get that. And I do want to kind of ask, offensively, having a guy like, Sonny Cumbie. What am I saying?
It's a lot of Sonnies. We've had a lot of Sonnies around our
Sonnies.
program, our program.
What is with TCU? Too many Sonnies. A guy like Sonny Dykes, and then obviously, the new offensive coordinator, Garrett Riley, familiar last name. It's been a bit of a shift from the Gary Patterson era. Definitely less stale, I imagine. We know you were a Fire Patterson guy from our streams last year. But what has this new coaching staff brought to the team? How's the overall vibe, both offensively and, losing a guy like Patterson? How has that affected the defense as well? Just coaching wise, what's going on?
Yeah, so I was very much on the board to get rid of Patterson at the end, and what we will miss, like Gary Patterson will always and forever be one of like the best defensive minds in college football, period. Like the fact that he was able to build a program and specifically base it around this defense for a team that like TCU was nothing, like was absolutely nothing, and took them out of the doldrums, and now we're a Power 5 team. Like that's incredible. So we're not going to see that high upside defense, like a Gary Patterson defense that has his mark on it, his players, his athletes. Like those were legendary defenses, like top 5 in the nation consistently over many, many years. And so we're not going to see that. But Joe Gillespie, he was the former Tulsa defensive coordinator, honestly was a rising star and somebody that I was surprised we even got, just because they had some really good Tulsa defenses while he was there. And basically what he's done is he's come in, simplified everything. We don't have the athletes right now. We kind of saw it last year. It didn't get much better. We lost our like 2 or 3 of our best defenders to the portal. It only got worse. But Joe Gillespie has simplified things. He's made sure to keep at least people in front of you, which is what we need right now. Once he gets his guys in, I think it's going to be a really good defensive team. I hope we can keep him as a coordinator, honestly, because I think he's going to get some looks for head coaching jobs. But on the offensive side of the ball, Sonny Dykes, Garrett Riley, it's going to be probably a little... Garrett Riley's good, but like Sonny Dykes obviously has a big hand in the offense, and that's why we hired him. And honestly, he brings a lot of optimism. Like the offense looks a lot... It just like, it feels fresh. It doesn't feel like we're trying to get our four-star guys like on the wide receiver or the running back, like get them involved to make plays themselves. It feels like the schemes actually work, and that guys that are 3 stars can actually like get big gains and stuff like that. We're not just relying on pure athleticism. So it's been great on an offensive side of it. And then just like program culture in general, just because I bet not a lot of people are familiar with TCU program culture, but I feel like Sonny Dykes, the good thing about him was when we hired him, we knew he was going to lean into NIL. You knew he was going to lean into the transfer portal a lot more than Gary. Like, Gary's mantra was like 40, not 4. Like, talking about how everybody on the team needs to be treated the same. No. That's how you lose guys like Zach Evans, is if you're not treating like, some guys need to play more, and like, because they are better. And I think Sonny Dykes just kind of gets it from that perspective. He understands what players want. Like, we had our whole media team now that does all these like player photos, similar to what you see at OU, with recruits and stuff like that. Just like the basics of better branding as a whole. So it's optimism right now. It could like go south, but honestly, like I came into this year like 6-6. I thought was gonna be us, and after these first few games, I feel like we can shoot just like slightly higher from that, which is like honestly a great feeling.
Well, cool. Yeah, I think that that's a pretty good appraisal of the situation overall, and let's hope you don't get one step closer for sure. Ty, do you have any final questions for Blake?
Yeah, as we wrap up, one thing that came to mind is OU is currently averaging 59 penalty yards a game, which is just one more than TCU at 58, because 58 is one less than 59. That's how that works.
Thank you.
So I lost my train of thought. A lot of people would refer to a lot of OU's penalties as dumb penalties. I think it's a phrase that's kind of goofy because every penalty is a dumb penalty, barring the, sometimes you can just have an accident, a bang bang play. Maybe it turns into a targeting or something like that. But OU's had a lot of dumb penalties or sloppy penalties. When you look at TCU, because obviously I assume you've been following TCU and raging at these 58 penalty yards a game. Do you see a lot of dumb penalties? Do you see a lot of discipline issues? Or do you see a lot more of just the guys are out there playing hard and things are happening?
Yeah, I don't think they're as dumb. Like, in the moment, they felt dumb last week, but kind of like looking back, it's like we allowed a lot of like holding and pass interference on defense. That was just because like we didn't want guys to burn us. So I'm like, okay, this receiver is just so much like Rashee Rice and some of those SMU receivers are just probably so much better than our corners. Like, give us another chance, which honestly helped us win that game. It just like keeping your defense on the field really does help. And an underrated part about that game, we got a lot of false starts, or not false starts, we got a lot of delay of games. SMU's play clocks didn't work the entire game at the stadium. It was such a bum experience at that game. Not only is like the stadium built where there's absolutely no shade on any of the sides or the concession stands, I had to wait 35 minutes to get a bottle of water, and the fact that it took over 30 minutes to get in the game. Their bum stadium can't even get the play clocks going, and so it's like, I don't know, like, SMU looked polished, like they were down, like they would operate without a clock. I don't want to accuse them of some sabotage, but they seemed pretty prepared when the clocks went off, and we were kind of having to do it on our own, and Max Duggan just didn't do well with that. Like, it almost cost us the game at the end, where, like, Kendra Miller got a 6-yard gain to kind of ice it, and then it put it, like, and we were going to get those 4 yards, then backed it up by a delay of game. I feel better. Like, we're going to have penalties this week just because OU receivers are fast and they're going to beat our corners and we're going to make some dumb PIs and stuff like that. But I don't think it's like a PI where he's in your face and you're trying to go for the ball and it's just like a dumb hold. It's going to be like, oh my God, he's going to beat us. Like, just rip him down and take the 15 yards because the gain is going to be a lot worse.
There you go. Well, Blake, that's about all we have. But before you go, any Sooners traveling to the game in Fort Worth, do you have any recommendations, food-wise, drink-wise? What should they hit up?
Yeah, so if you want to go something close to the stadium, I know it's an early game, definitely hit up Buffalo Bros or Dutch's. They're right on kind of, I think it's Stadium or University, one of those. It's on it's near the bookstore. You'll see them. Dutch's has basically bought that whole block. Dutch's, the good thing is they do to-go beers in the morning. They've really expanded the bar and stuff like that. So if you don't have a tailgate you're going to and just want to grab a quick, they do come in purple Solo cups, so you will have to do that. But if you want to take a roadie, I would go there. If you want something with a little bit more time, barbecue is the way to go. Obviously, I have not been yet, and probably too hard to get to on game day, but the number one place in Texas right now is at Goldie's.
Goldie's opens at 11, and they'd be sold out by the time the game started.
So, not Goldie's, but if you want some still really good barbecue, that's a little bit more reasonably timed, Heim is a great option. I know they've expanded a lot. They used to be only on Magnolia Street, now they've gone more to Clear Fork. If you kind of want to go shopping afterwards and have a little bit more bougier experience, go over there. It's great barbecue, and you can get it all day. So I would say those are some solid ones of just like very traditional Fort Worth places.
There you go. Absolutely love it. Love to hear it. Fort Worth, definitely one of my favorite spots. And if this is the last time, which it very well might be, I'm certainly going to miss it, and I'm going to soak it all up. I know. I'm definitely pumped. So anyways, Jameson, I don't think you have any more questions. You mentioned it in the private chat. So I'm going to shut this one down. Thank you to all of y'all for listening. Thank you, Boatin Blake, for hopping on, giving us the inside on the Horned Frogs. And then Ty and Jameson, of course, always, thanks for being on the show. That has been the Schooner Pod. That's all we got for today. make sure to keep an eye out for the weekend spread where we make our picks for this game and then many others on the slate. If you're listening live, we're about to go literally turn around and go live on the weekend spread. So stick with us on YouTube if you're watching live. All right, that's all we got. Thank you all so much for listening, and Boomer Sooner.